You have the tremors at the age of 40 and you're a former college athlete. That becomes embarrassing.
The Be Still Foundation deals with Parkinson's, and you went through that in your own life.
Because of my age, I think they were a little too scared and nervous to tell me that I had early onset Parkinson's.
Right now, I don't see that you're having these tremors, so something had to have changed.
I knew something good was gonna happen that day at that point.
People can get their lives back, change their lives, get better, and this is all because of a procedure called Bobby Krause. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
Good, man. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for hanging out with us. First episode in the brand new studio.
What an honor, privilege.
Right on, man. Well, the honor's all mine having you in here, but it's going to be cool. Yeah, I got to get used to it.
It's a great little studio here.
Yeah, I dig it. We got Joe there, Joseph producing. We got to get him on a microphone so he can participate. When I talk crap about him, he can come back at me. But Bobby, thanks for coming in, man. Appreciate you taking the time. I want to talk about the greatness that you're doing. Came in that one day, you told us about everything that was going on. The Be Still Foundation deals with, Parkinson's, and tremors. And you went through that in your own life.
Right.
So, if you could take me back to the beginning, take me back what it was like when you first learned about when you were diagnosed with this.
Sure, yeah. It's certainly a difficult time in life. But in the late 30s, I started noticing some, again, what I thought was kind of a nervous tic. At the time, again, was very active in sports, was very active in coaching, was at a high level in the corporate world as a VP of several sales companies and organizations. So just kind of poo-pooed and just talked my way out of thinking what it was. So finally got my first neurology appointment once the tics got a little more prominent. And at the time, because of my age, I think they were a little too scared and nervous to tell me that I had early onset Parkinson's. So they referred me to another physician, which led me to my visit down to University of Penn. But the manifestation of the symptoms were the tremors primarily. And again, when you have the tremors at the age of 40 and you're a former college athlete, involved heavily in your son's lives, it becomes embarrassing. It was a struggle. It was a challenge. I had a serious feeling of brokenness, ashamedness. And again, it was just because the mind wanted to do something, but the body wouldn't do what the mind was telling it to do. And kind of the catalyst for me was coaching my sons. And again, coaching is stressful enough. Coaching your sons is a whole different level of stress.
I can only imagine.
And stress makes tremors actually much more vibrant, much more impactful.
Really?
And got to the point where I was on the sideline. I would have to put my arm inside of a hoodie sleeve to try to hide the tremors because I was embarrassed at what the parents were thinking.
I feel like when you have something like that, you shouldn't be embarrassed per se because it's something you can't control.
I think some of it too is just being self-conscious. Again, being 40 years old and not being able to control the movements of my body was something that I really struggled with personally.
I understand.
But I did have some events. I traveled a lot for work. So coming through TSA through a lot of countries created problems. When I would give them my passport, they would see my arm was shaking. And one of the other side effects of Parkinson's is sweating. So you're standing in front of the TSA agent and you're sweating and you're shaking, and he asks you, is there anything you need to declare? And he's like, no. And he's like, well, let's go to the back room, and you're going through additional searches. And next thing, you're just having a conversation about how I have Parkinson's. And he's like, no, that's a disease for older people. And I'm like, well, no, unfortunately it's not.
And is it common to be in young people, like 30s, 40s?
Well, it's very uncommon. So typically young on Parkinson's is described as people under the age of 50. And it would be low single percentage of total Parkinson's patients in the U.S. that are young onset Parkinson's. So there's roughly 1.2 million in the U.S. So again, less than 100,000 patients would be young onset Parkinson's.
Still a lot.
Still a lot.
I mean, one person's a lot, right?
And it's growing. We just heard from the National Institute of Health, they're saying by 2050, the rate will over double for Parkinson's in the United States, and a lot of it has to do with herbicides, pesticides, and environmental changes, and then a little bit on the brain trauma, and then some impact from genetics.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. You know, talking to even friends of mine at the Reading Hospital, they were telling me something about prostate cancer being super high now, going up like 50 or 75% or something like that. And I asked him, whoa, like what's going on? And the first thing he said was food.
Processed foods.
All the crap that's just out there, the things that you put in your body, you know, like dilly bars, I guess. I don't know, those organic. By the way, Bobby came in with dilly bars for everybody. We appreciate that. Yeah, but yeah, you know, like he was talking to me about that. It was a wild statistic, man, like 75%.
Yes.
So you have the Parkinson's, you're in your 40s.
Yeah.
But right now I don't see that you're having these tremors, so something had to have changed.
It did. So before I got to that point, again, being in the corporate world, I was responsible for doing a lot of public speaking engagements. Had my own sales teams that I led. So it got to the point where Parkinson's presents itself with a lot of times of just being tired and just no energy and inability to focus. So I'd find myself at times on the floor of my office, under a desk, again, just really dealing with additional symptoms besides just the tremors initially. And then it was finally at the age of 42, I got my formal diagnosis from University of Penn that I indeed did have a young-onset Parkinson's disease.
Wow, what was that like, man?
You know, it was a real challenge for me. I mean, as most people are aware, Parkinson's is one of the few diseases that have no known cure at this point. Now, thank God for Michael J. Fox Foundation and the Davis Finney and others who are pumping hundreds of millions, in fact, in the case of Michael J. Fox, billions of dollars into research. But the hope is that we find a cure soon, because that does create some mental challenges that other indications and other diseases don't create. When you don't know what the progression is, what stages you're in, what tomorrow is going to look like. Every day is a little bit different than the day before. And everybody who has Parkinson's disease has some different manifestation of symptoms. So even from Parkinson's patients within each other, we don't always have the same symptoms. So I've been reading articles lately where they refer to as Parkinson's diseases, because everybody has a slight differentiation between the neck from one to one. But
you were telling us about that in the beginning when we started working together.
Yeah.
I was like, because you were telling us about what you were suffering from, and then you were talking to me about Michael J. Fox, and then there's actually a difference between what the both of you have.
Correct. So you have tremor-dominant Parkinson's, you have cervical dystonias, you have bradykinesias. There's just a variety of manifestations that the movement disorders will present in the body, and then you have the dementia. You have hallucinations for some.
Really?
You have obviously a high case of depression. Most recent research shows that with Parkinson's patients, over 50% battle some stage of depression and require assistance to support those needs.
I mean, I could only imagine, man, like, suffering from Parkinson's. And I mean, it would probably, for me, it's probably only natural that, depression would come from it being that you can't stop yourself from doing something. Your mind just takes over.
Right. And sometimes it's even to the point where some patients have a term it's called fog or freezing of gait, where the body will just come to a complete halt, just completely freeze up, like the old game of freeze tag. But you literally can't move, and you have to come up with mental cues, whether it's a tick or whether it's a shifting of the weight, thinking of something that has some beat in your mind. It's the only way that your body will release itself and allow you to continue to move forward. So
that's wild, man.
There's a variety of symptoms, again, that are just so unique to each individual.
Wow, that's unfortunate. Absolutely. So what was it like with your family, man? You said you were doing coaching both of your sons.
Yeah.
I met your wife. She's awesome. But what was the effect of what you were going through?
It was really a strain. Again, I truly believe I was put on this earth to be a husband and a father. And, was really involved in my son's lives. Once they diagnosed me with Parkinson's, they put me on the medication. That's where the transition really happened for me in a negative perspective, especially as it pertains to the family. The medication for me was a significant driver of depression. Once an extrovert became an introvert. So I would often be home in bed by 6:30 at night while the boys and my wife were outside, living life. And at the time, I was just afraid to be exposed for the symptoms I had. Just again, the medication just puts you in this point of just wanting to be isolating and basically just kind of hibernate. And there's not much you can do to pull yourself out of it. I mean, we would have people over at the house, and I'd be very vocal of saying, hey, you're welcome to stay here from 6 to 8, but at 8 o'clock you need to leave the house. So you become even very protective of your personal time and personal space, and it just draws you into yourself. So, many of the things I had to participate in were via text and email. I could watch live stream games, but again, I just really insulated myself from the rest of them, not knowing where I was going to be tomorrow, how I was going to feel tomorrow, and not being able to do those things that I wanted to as a father and as a husband.
When did you find out that there was hope for you? Because like I was saying before, you obviously, the tremors are almost non-existent with you sitting right in front of me now.
Yeah.
Did somebody bring it up to you? Did you do research to find out about this procedure that you were talking to me about that helped you gain part of your life back?
Yeah, so after trial and tribulations with the medication for about 3 to 4 years, I finally just got to the point where the medication was worse than the disease itself. There had to be another option. And we've talked about it before, but the catalyst for me was my son's 12-year birthday party. I came around the corner and I could overhear him apologizing to his friends the way Dad was behaving because he's on Parkinson's and the medication's really rough. So again, as somebody who was destined to be a father, that was just heartbreaking. I ran in the house and immediately flushed all the medication down the toilet. Got on the internet and figured out there's got to be some sort of clinical trial I could participate in, something holistic, something out of the box that would be much better than the medication I was on. And I was fortunate enough that University of Penn, they were doing some clinical trials for a new procedure called Focused Ultrasound. That's a incisionless procedure that attacks the part of the thalamus that creates the tremors, and in real time basically eviscerates and evaporates the tremor through the use of focused ultrasound waves.
What is it that causes the tremor in your brain? I guess, what is it? What happens in there?
So in the thalamus, for people with Parkinson's disease, with being tremor dominant, there's a spot in the thalamus that prevents the neurons from firing correctly. And then there's also a loss of neurons that are through the dopamine. So it's not producing enough dopamine that's needed to keep the body running the way that it needs to run.
Okay, so then you found this clinical trial, and I guess you were approved to try it out yourself.
I was, but I failed the last test. So there's 5 tests that you have to pass in order to go through the clinical trials. And if I would have done the clinical trials, it would have been a paid-for event for me. So the hope was that there's this clinical trial that's occurring that's under FDA approval process. So that was where the hope came. And then it was right before COVID hit that the FDA actually approved focused ultrasound as a treatment for tremor-dominant Parkinson's disease.
What do you mean you failed the last test, though?
So you have to do various tests on skull density and thickness. There was a variety of parameters as part of the clinical trial. They wanted to make sure that they were creating consistent metrics so that it would go through the FDA approval process. And because of my age, that was one of the eliminating factors. I was too young at the time.
Jeez, it was too young to go through this?
But I had the other qualifications, because for focused ultrasound, you have to have the correct skull density to allow the ultrasound waves to do what they need to do and create those ablations on the brain.
Well, yours too thin?
Mine was just the perfect thickness. So even though my wife says I'm very thick-headed, I was fortunate enough to have the right skull density to go through with the procedure.
But when you say you were too young, is that because of skull density?
No. I was too young because I think the parameters that they had set up for the clinical trial, I didn't meet those parameters that they wanted to be able to say consistently for ages 65 to 72.
Oh, because they were doing a trial. They needed to get all this specific data.
Correct.
Wow. So then, but you ended up being allowed to have it, what you said, on a cost of your own, or you were able to get approved later on?
Yeah, so once the clinical trials finished up, there was a little bit of a waiting period for the FDA approval to come through. The approval came through, and then COVID was in its glory, in its heyday, and when just completely slowed everything down. So I should have probably had the procedure in early of 2021. I actually was scheduled and had the procedure done June 9th of 2022. And to your point, yes, because of my age again, not being of Medicare age, my insurance coverage with Capital Blue Cross Blue Shield doesn't cover treadmill dominant Parkinson's disease. So the hope quickly became a little bit of a despair once I saw that the invoice was close to $50,000 for the procedure to be done. But knowing that it would take away my tremors, there had to be a way. And I was very fortunate enough to have a wife's employer want to invest in the family and paid out of pocket for me to have the procedure.
Really?
Yes.
That's amazing. And who was that? Am I allowed to ask who that was? Or
They'd asked to be anonymous.
okay, so we don't even know we're not allowed to know the company.
No, not allowed to know the company. But
Okay, I was gonna say everybody support the company. Go out and buy whatever they're selling.
no, they're doing all the things for the right reason, and they want to make sure they're behind the scenes on this. So
No, absolutely. That's great.
Yeah.
But it's great. But I wish I knew, because I like supporting people that help people.
yeah,
Like, why wouldn't you want to support a company that would even invest in something like that?
Right.
So that's miraculous. So how long did you have to wait from, I guess, when you figured out the trial to, you said June of 2022. So how long was that whole process?
it was shortly at the end of January of the same year, 2022, that myself, my neurologist, the neurosurgeon, Margie, my wife, and we all sat down and we said, okay, this is the course of action we're going to go through. And again, we were looking at another procedure called DBS, deep brain stimulation, that requires partial drilling of holes through the skull, and then the implanting of a pacemaker in the chest, and inserting probes into the same area of the brain that the focused ultrasound. And for me, it's a 3-part procedure with 2 major surgeries that could provide infection, a longer downtime, and I just wasn't ready for that at this stage of my life. Being in my 40s at the time, I was like, nah, I'll wait a little bit later and use some of the newer technology and see how I respond, because you can always go back to DBS, which is considered the gold standard for treatment of Parkinson's, tremors.
Drilling holes in your head.
Drilling holes in your head is the gold standard.
All right. But you were fortunate enough for this company. You had Focused Ultrasound. So tell me that, because I know it personally, obviously, because we work
Right.
together, but I want you to explain to everybody like what Focused Ultrasound was, and when you did the procedure, how it all went down.
Yeah, so it is, even though there's no incision, there's no anesthesia, it still is brain surgery. So what they do is they shave the head so that there's no impedance between the ultrasound waves and the area that they're targeting. So again, if you think of an MRI tube, you have the circularity of the tube. An ultrasound wave will fire 1,100 different sound waves in a circular pattern to create that 3D imaging that you typically will see from an MRI. With focused ultrasound, for the use of this procedure, all 1,100 waves point to 1 micromillimeter on the brain, that part of the thalamus, and it's all guided by the MRI. And it creates a slight ablation by heating up that part of the thalamus and creating a slight little burn, which basically kills the cells and nerves in that area and allows the brain to rewire in real time.
And so you did this procedure, and correct me if I'm wrong, you did 1 session and you saw improvement.
Yeah, so you're fully awake inside of the tube, and probably the first 30 minutes while you're in the tube, you obviously can hear the loud noises that an MRI tube and machine make. And what they're doing at that point is they're really targeting that spot on the thalamus that they can determine is creating the tremors, some of the dyskinesia, and then some of the rigidity. So they bring you out and they do various testing, writing in concentric circles, writing your name, holding of a glass of water, finger taps, things like that. And they're getting a baseline for how bad your tremors are or your movement disorder is. So you go in the second time, and they call them sonications. And a sonication is just simply when that ultrasound waves for roughly a 5 to 10 second period of time, creates that ablation on the brain. And you're laying flat on the table. You have a skull, a cradle that you're bolted into. There's 2 bolts in the front, 2 in the back. And there's another mask that goes over like on a traditional MRI, and you're completely locked in the tube. But you basically feel a warming sensation from the ears going up to the top of the brain as the sonication is heating up the brain and creating that ablation. And I could hear the doctors telling me on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th ablation is when I'm going to feel differences in my body. And again, being somewhat of a skeptic, having tremors for almost 10 years at that point, You know, it was kind of a wait and see attitude.
Right.
You know, can ultrasound waves really cure me in real time? So on the second sonication, as they put me back into the tube, they warmed up the MRI machine. I could feel the brain warming up. At that point, I had such bad dystonia in my foot. My toes were curled underneath my feet, and I could look down through the little mirror in the skull cradle, and I just saw my toes just completely pop open. And I knew something good was gonna happen that day at that point.
That's wild, man.
So they bring you back out again. They go through the whole rigmarole of all the various testing just to see how you're handling, and that's why you're awake. They want to see in real time how the results are truly manifesting. So the third time I went in, again, and for you and me, MRI tubes are not our friend. You know, at the time I was close to 350 pounds, and going into that tube, I could actually feel the walls just kind of, my arms are squeaking as they're putting me in. You have your arms crossed, and again, it's just not, for a 2-hour period, it's not the most of a favorable of positions to be in. But I was dealing with rigidity, where the morning that I went in, I measured at 6'5" on my height, and when I left, I was 6'6", and it wasn't because I grew an inch that day, but my muscles had released, and all the compression and contraction had been so bad for the past year that I was hunched over, and I was able to stand upright and gain that inch back. So on that third sonication, I could feel my whole body just completely kind of conform to the circularity of the MRI machine.
Wow.
Just all the muscles just gave up its tenseness and rigidity and just released themselves.
What did that feel like, man? Like, just, you know, coming out of that tube 2 hours later and your life is almost back to normal.
Yeah, so I really noticed it on the fourth one. The fourth one was the one where they were targeting the tremors. And you have your arms crossed across your chest, and I'm watching my hands shake very violently because, again, stress. It's always cold in an MRI room for some reason. And then obviously the angst of what's going on, the excitement, those things all trigger tremors to be worse. And so my tremor was just going off at that point. And so as I went back in the tube, they said, this is the one that you should see a big difference on. So I had my arms crossed, I'm shaking. I could feel the sensation warming in the brain. I looked down at my hands, and my hand just came completely still. And it was the first time in 8 years plus that I could actually just see my hand without any movement. And unfortunately, you're in the MRI tube by yourself, but I just sobbed uncontrollably because I knew that my life had truly been altered and changed for the better. And I was immediately thinking about how was my family going to respond to having their dad and their father back. And
how was it?
It was amazing. When I got home that night, you know, when I first saw the boys, both the boys had tears in their eyes, and they knew there was something different with Dad. So that night, for the first night in a long time, we actually went for a hike around 11 o'clock that night. And for the ensuing weeks, we were doing a lot, to the point where the boys were like, you know, Dad, let's calm down here a little bit. You know, we don't want the old dad back, but you know, we don't have to do something every night. And so just trying to make up for lost time.
So the first thing you did was a hike at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, we put the headlights on and took a hike out through Maple Grove.
That's cool, man.
It was an incredible day. But yeah, so my day that day started at 9 a.m. The procedure lasted for roughly 2 hours. I was in recovery for another 2 hours, and then I was home that night doing normal things.
That is crazy.
The technology is absolutely amazing. And I was on a call yesterday where they actually have the procedure. So 5 years ago, the procedure used to take 5 hours per procedure. They now have it down to 90 minutes.
Wow.
They're able to do the same process in that shortened of a time frame.
So now it's down to 90 minutes.
90 minutes.
People can get their lives back, change their lives.
Change their lives.
Get better. And this is all because of a procedure called Focused Ultrasound.
That's correct.
I'm happy for you, man.
Thank you.
That's cool, man. I mean, that's a great story. But then you decided to take it even further.
Yeah.
You decided, I'm going to create a foundation and help other people.
Yeah, my life was so dramatically altered through the example that this employer had, and it's not just me. They've done this time and time again through various charities, foundations, and other through other events. It just resonated to me that there was certainly value and purpose in my life in the corporate world, but there's much more value and purpose that I could see by starting a foundation that allowed me to pay it forward and allow other people to experience the same thing that I went through.
Right on.
So it was May of last year, so we're almost on our 1 year anniversary of starting the foundation. This is a full-time gig now, just trying to create education and awareness and ultimately the financial support for people to go through the same focused ultrasound procedure that changed my life.
Yeah, and you call it the Be Still Foundation.
Correct.
Right, and so that was started of May of last year. Be Still Foundation. You were gracious enough to come in here and let us know all about it. We helped you with some marketing tools for you to spread your message. Let's get into it, man. Like, so we talked about the Focused Ultrasound. We see how it changes lives. Obviously, you had to have changed other people's lives who are going through this, even in this short span of almost a year, because we've talked about a couple people that you've helped out. So tell us about somebody that, you've helped out in this past year with the Be Still Foundation.
Yeah, so the goal for this year is to be able to help 50 patients. 50 patients,
Right on.
have the procedure to, again, alter and change their lives. We're up to 14, so we have a little bit of way to go, but we're making some headway, which is great for our first year. But we've done everything from provide full cost for the procedure. We've provided transportation, hotel stays, accommodations, wigs, and other types of financial support. So anything that would prevent somebody from going forward with the process, if they're qualified and they want to go through, we want to be there to make sure that there's the financial component is not a hurdle for them.
And you've helped out 14 people so far.
14 people, ages as young as 41 years old, as old as 93.
Wow. Is that total then for overall for the foundation? Or just for 25?
This is just for 2025.
How many have you helped overall, you think?
Probably close to 20, because again, we got a little bit of a late jump in 2024.
Right on.
But we were able to help some people towards the back half of the year through some generous donations that we received.
So 20 people.
Yeah.
20 people since you guys started a year ago have different lives.
They do.
Are any of them like as successful as yours or even more? Or, is there different ranges of that?
So we looked at it the other day because what they've done is they've become a part of our Team Triumph. It's a advocacy network of people who are willing to share their story, just like I'm doing now with you today.
Right on.
And what they do is they'll help us provide the industry with their metrics and how they're feeling, and we can use that to improve the patient process and experience. But nobody's reported less than 80% improvement in their overall tremors.
Wow.
But most of them have reported as high as 95 has been the highest.
95. Is that you?
No, that was a younger gentleman down in South Carolina that had the procedure done recently.
95%.
Yes.
That is amazing, man. And kudos to you guys.
And his procedure was interesting. He was 41 years old, has his MBA, was out on a date trying to find his soulmate, and was shaking violently at the table. She asked him if he was in withdrawal or if he was a drug addict. He got embarrassed. They ended up calling the date early, and he just said at that point, I have to find some way to get rid of these tremors.
So he was suffering from tremors. Did he know that there were like Parkinson's tremors, or did he just think it was just like a tick, like kind of like you were thinking in the beginning?
Same thing, yeah. He just kind of put it to the side that this will go away. Maybe it's a nerve impingement. Went to the chiropractor, did a variety of things, and nothing healed, and then started getting some of the other symptoms, some of the slowness and some of the posture issues that also arise. But he was tremor dominant, young-onset Parkinson's.
Wow, that's amazing, and he was able to benefit from the Be Still Foundation.
Correct.
Wow. So if somebody out there is looking for help, what's the best way to see if they qualify?
So the best thing they could do is come to the website. So at bestill.foundation, we have a variety of ways that you can connect with us, and we can put you in touch with the right people. There's a couple of surveys that you can complete to get information if you want to go that route. But then also too, there's a contact us page on there that allows us to call, email, whatever you prefer. We'll get back to you within 24 to 48 hours for sure.
Right on. And what about people who just want to help?
For those that want to help, the best way to help at this point is the financial support.
Yeah.
These procedures are expensive. And again, what we found out is insurance coverage doesn't cover for most pre-Medicare age. So, and it typically is 100% out of pocket. It varies anywhere from 30 to 50K per side of the body.
Per side of the body.
Per side of the body, correct.
Explain that to me.
Yeah, so if you have tremors on your left side of the body, they're going to treat the thalamus on the right side of the brain. Now, if you happen to have tremors on both sides of the body, they're going to have to treat then 9 months later the left side of the brain for the right side of the body.
Did you only have one side?
I only had one side, correct.
Okay. So people have both sides.
Some people have both sides, correct.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Have you helped anyone with that?
We've had a couple that have it, but it was more, they were diagnosed with essential tremors that had them on both sides. And that was a real challenge because typically if you're only on one side, you can steady your hand with the other side.
Right.
But if you have both going at the same time, it creates a lot of headaches.
And have you helped them?
Yeah. Yeah. We've had one recently, was a gentleman that was, he was pushing 90. And he said, rarely at the age of 90 do you have a life-altering experience that's positive. And he said, this by far was my life-altering experience that was positive. And he said, I wish I would have done this years and years ago. He was diagnosed in his early teens.
What?
And suffered with tremors almost 50 to 60 years.
50 to 60 years of tremors.
Yeah.
God bless him, man. I don't know if I could have waited that long.
No.
I mean, I can only imagine. Obviously, I didn't experience it all, but I can only imagine going through that and then doing it for 50 to 60 years.
Yeah.
That's insane. So everybody's got to get out there and go to Be Still Deaf Foundation and give you some cash.
So that sounds like a plan.
So, but again, it's only been a year though. You've been doing some crazy things. So you've been getting out there nationally.
Yeah, we've been invited to Capitol Hill on several occasions, so we've been able to meet with Congressman Fetterman, Congressman Smucker. We've met with Congressman Elizabeth Warren. We are now working with a couple of other caucuses, the Make America Healthy Again caucus as well. We've been able to put on events and symposiums as far as Texas, New Jersey, New York, PA. But yeah, we're early on, we've been able to make some headway, and it's really due to the fact that we've had some strong supporters that have helped elevate the awareness and education of the Be Still Foundation and put us in a great position to share our story and our journey.
What are those senators and the government? What are they trying to do for you?
Yeah, so right now, one of the big initiatives is we're trying to use to create a bill that will allow for breakthrough technologies to advance quicker in the public sector. So right now, oftentimes organizations will bring together a unique product like Focused Ultrasound, and it just takes years and years and just burns cash for these companies that have brought this incredible technology, but it just takes 8 to 12 years to go through the process. We're trying to expedite that and say, okay, if we have the clinical trials and the data to support the efficacy of this type of breakthrough technology, let's get it to market quicker, let's get insurance coverage speeded up, so we're not so heavily reliant on medication as the sole source of treatment.
How about, are they helping with insurance covering this procedure?
That's one of the angles, as well as trying to get the insurance coverage to improve. Again, typically once there's an FDA approval process, there's a while where insurance companies take to adapt to those treatment plans, to having the right codes, et cetera. And again, a lot of times it's just dragging a feet because we make so much money on the prescription pills. A one-stop shop like Focused Ultrasound, can prevent me from taking certain medications for the rest of my life. Well, there's a lot of money, dollars and cents there that are impacted. So
yeah, which is terrible because we'd rather make money than help people.
Exactly.
Which is, I think everybody's starting to realize that with big pharma and all those blah blah blah. We could talk about that for another 3 hours about how much it sucks. I mean, I really wish there was different things for people out there. Like, insurance is there to help you. You should be able to, if you suffer from, tremors, you should be able to go to, your doctor, have them tell you what's going on. This is how you fix it. Go to the insurance, let the insurance handle it. You should be good to go.
Yeah, like Focused Ultrasound right now has 176 different indications that are in FDA clinical trials. So it's not just Parkinson's and tremors. They're working on one right now for prostate cancer. So if it's caught early enough, basically Focused Ultrasound can basically burn and evaporate the tumor inside the body without having any incisions, no cutting, no radiation, no toxicity from the chemotherapy, much quicker up and down time. And at the end, for men, when you have to take the medication to reduce your testosterone, you don't have to do that with Focused Ultrasound. So you can keep those best parts of being a man and testosterone through the procedure and through the remission process. So there's so many applications that are out there for breast cancer, pancreatic cancer. They're actually now doing it for alcoholism,
Really?
OCD. There's a variety of things that focused ultrasound can treat without the need for a knife and an incision. And again, a real quick in and out procedure.
How about eating?
The gentleman who did my procedure at Penn actually did one for binge eating. Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's cool. That's awesome, man.
I asked him when I was down there, could he give me a 2-for-1? And he wasn't quite ready yet to get both parts of the brain.
Well, you look like you're doing pretty good though, bro.
The dark shirt and the triple extra large covers a lot. So
Yeah, but you're tall.
I'm tall.
Yeah, you're tall. So it's pretty good. I'm short. That's my problem. I'm short and tubby. You're good though. So Be Still Foundation, what are your goals for the future, my man? What do you think it's going to be doing in about 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, pretty similar to the model that Michael J. Fox has as well, where it's just like, I hope at some point that there's no need for a foundation because there's a cure, because we're able to handle this through the necessary means, but I don't see that happening. Mm-hmm. But it's a great goal to aspire to. But for us, again, we're looking to hopefully gain exponential growth again. As I mentioned earlier, there's currently 1.1 million people with Parkinson's in the U.S., 10 million with essential tremor. But like I said, there's an explosion occurring right now, again, because of manufacturing areas, because of herbicides, pesticides. We're seeing a significant tick in those with young-onset Parkinson's. So there's going to be a huge need for the foundation in the near and the mid and the long term for us to be there to support that new generation coming up with the disease that's going to have to deal with it. Most people get diagnosed in their late 60s, early 70s with Parkinson's, and you're working on your back 10th% of the of your stage of life. Where we're starting to hear now people in their 30s, getting diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's. And we're trying to extend the life, but more importantly, extend the quality of life. So that's where I think the foundation can come in and really be an asset for them as they work through their management of the disease.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Is there any kind of, are there any cool partnerships you got coming up, recently with certain foundations or?
Yeah, we've been working with a couple, and actually we had one yesterday. It's called a group called Causes for Candles. It was started by a young entrepreneur down in Atlanta whose grandfather was kind of written off through all aspects of his life, ended up getting 2 PhDs, was one of the producers for Sesame Street.
Right on.
He was on the board for Harley Davidson and others, so he had some challenges with Parkinson's, and his granddaughter wanted to give back, so we're working on a collaboration with them for some candles and sales that would go to the Be Still Foundation. We've also been able to do some programming with Apollo Ono, the Olympic fame.
Yeah.
So he's been generous to support the foundation in a variety of ways. And then we're in the process of working with the PDM Alliance, the Parkinson's Disease Movement Disorder Alliance. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's a lot on the works where we're trying to get a rising tides floats all boats situation. And again, it's just about educational awareness and ultimately getting in front of the people who need us the most.
Right on, man. That's awesome, Bobby. I appreciate you coming in today, talking to us about Be Still Foundation. Everybody out there, BeStill.Foundation is the website.
Yes, sir.
Right on. Get out there. Drop some cash if you can drop some cash. If you can't, contact Bobby about volunteering. And hey, if you're an entrepreneur and you have a great company out there and you want to, hang out with Bobby and Margie and all of them and help out people suffering from the essential tremors, get in touch. And hopefully maybe we'll have you back soon and you're telling us about this crazy implosion of donations and you're helping, not 50, but your goal is then 500 and then maybe 5,000.
Well, thank you, Fred, and thank you so much for you and your team and all that you do to help spread the word.
It's our pleasure.
It's been incredible. Been an incredible partnership so far, and excited to see where it's going to take us.
Me too, man. Thank you, Bobby, and talk to you real soon.
Thanks, Fred.
I gotta